Transgender people in the UK woke up to some very uncomfortable news. And so they are not sitting well, you guys. What's good, guys? Thank you so much for coming back to this channel. It always bless me when you do these things. And you know, I put stories together for you and viral videos so you don't have to go looking through thousands. Okay, so let's get into this video. So Health Secretary of United Kingdom has announced plans to ban transgender women from female hospital wards. Now they feel that they have been segregated, they have been put aside, and they have reacted to this video. Some have explained to say even if they say they're going to give them a different option as different from the biological woman that's maybe creating wards for them, they're saying, do they even have enough resources for them to go around and do this? Let me just roll this clip so you can hear what was said, and then you watch some reactions from some transgender people.
Access to adequate healthcare is something most people can agree is a basic human right, except when it comes to trans people. Here's why. Recently, the UK Health Secretary proposed banning trans women from female hospital wards as a way to restore common sense to the NHS.
And that is why today I am going further by announcing that we will change the NHS constitutions and protect the rights of women.
This proposed change would separate cisgender patients from trans patients. This is in contrast to current NHS guidance, which has allowed for transgender patients to be treated in single-sex wards that match their gender identity. To ban trans women from female hospital wards is a discriminatory and harmful policy that would violate transgender patients' rights to adequate and equal healthcare. Mr. Barclay says that he wants to make sure that the dignity, safety, and privacy of all patients was respected. Meanwhile, he is completely overlooking that of transgender people, essentially saying that they don't deserve those things. Transgender people already face significant challenges when it comes to accessing healthcare, and a policy like this would make that even harder. This proposal would make patients vulnerable to discrimination and harassment when they are seeking medical treatment. Furthermore, discriminatory policies like this have a negative impact on the mental health of transgender patients, such as increased rates of depression and suicide. It's vital that we prioritize the mental health and well-being of transgender people by providing them with safe and inclusive healthcare, which shouldn't be difficult.
Trans women have no place in women's wards or indeed any safe space relating to biological women, and the Health Secretary is absolutely right to clarify and make it clear that biological men should not have treatment in the same wards and in the same safe spaces as biological women. This is about protecting women's dignity and women's safety and women's privacy. And that's why I'm incredibly supportive and I welcome the announcement today by the Health Secretary.
I think waking up to the news today that Tories are now moving to ban trans women from wards in the UK is just wild for so many reasons. Okay, so take the obvious bigotry and transphobia out of it, and the insinuation that trans women are all these sex offenders and murderers and God knows what else. It's so bad that they think that they haven't crippled the NHS to the point where they're like, we can just put them in separate wards. Oh, can you? With what resources? Because you've already stripped that bare. So how are you going to do that? Just wondering. Also, trans people being on wards, what a concept, because when does that happen? Because it takes years and years and years to ever be seen for anything. And then if you take trans people out of it, being seen for anything outside of trans healthcare is borderline impossible too. Anyway, fuck them.
In England, trans hospital patients are due to be banned from male-only and female-only wards.
If we do not get this right now, the long-term consequences could be very serious for the protection of women and future generations. And conference, I know as Conservatives, we know what a woman is. And I know the vast majority of NHS staff and patients do too.
It's clear the Conservative Party feel that it is important to protect biological women's spaces in places like hospitals. But then Jamie Wallace, a Conservative, openly trans MP, tells The Guardian that they are grappling with a quote-unquote non-issue. His opinion comes from Freedom of Information requests, who asked hospital trusts whether there were any complaints from biological female inpatients about trans patients' presence, but apparently none were recorded. The Conservative MP Mr Barclay also announced the return of sex-specific language to the NHS after references to women were expunged from advice on the menopause and diseases such as cervical and ovarian cancer. He's become frustrated with ideological dogma in the health service where terms such as breastfeeding have been replaced by chest feeding and guidance referring to pregnant people rather than women. And under these changes, trans patients would be housed in their own accommodation, and that would mean separate rooms. Another very strongly worded article was written by feminist Julie Bindel. She has been an advocate for women's rights against, as she called, the misogynistic trans activist community. In this case, she feels they have suffered a huge defeat. The trans activist community may refer to her as a TERF. She says that trans women entering women's spaces in hospitals is nothing short of a disgrace. There were 6,500 rapes and sexual assaults recorded in hospitals in England and Wales during a 4-year period. 1 in 7 of these happened in hospital wards. I believe all patients in hospitals should be treated with respect and given the best care possible. Maybe that report that the trans MP referred to is actually true and there have been no complaints from biological women about trans inpatients. However, I would like to see the real data on that. And how do we know? I mean, how many women are too afraid to speak out on this issue? This has become a highly toxic issue. Women have lost their jobs over saying that they're not comfortable with trans women sharing their spaces. But nonetheless, if there are some biological women who are not comfortable with this, they have a right to be. Even if nothing's happening, everyone has the right to feel comfortable. Society keeps pushing the agenda onto women, but women do not owe you anything in that sense. They can disagree with it. They can say, sorry, but I'm not comfortable with that. And we need to learn that we're all different. Like, trans women have a different experience. And I think it is great that they're considering their own accommodation where their own needs can be met. Now, I do feel that last article is quite harsh. I think for the most part, trans women just want to get on with their lives. But I guess she's referring more to the trans activist community, in which we do see a lot of misogyny. We see a lot of women's rights being infringed upon if they're not comfortable, a right to have access to women's spaces. People want self-ID to come into law. So if I want to, tomorrow I can just announce I'm a woman and change that legally. And also, trans women taking accolades from other females in sports. So it is a complex issue that we need to tackle. And unfortunately, a lot of those loud voices from the trans activist community are very hateful. There's lots of threats, there's lots of harsh language, and they are giving the movement a lot of toxicity. So naturally, people like the Conservative Party are going to be scared about this and pushing back. So if everyone was able to just treat this situation calmly and debate it fairly, we'd make progress. But no, that's not possible because nothing is done that way. Everything has so much emotion and rage behind it, which I also understand. This change of language for women's healthcare situations, especially for stuff like ovarian cancer, as we all know, the only people that can get that are women because they are the only ones who menstruate and have wombs. But we still have to try and change the language here, and removing terms such as breastfeeding to chest feeding and birthing person, referring to people as pregnant people. I think that is so disrespectful, and any biological woman has the right to push back against that if she wants and say, you're not taking my identity away for the sake of political correctness or not wanting to offend someone else. And again, we see the hypocrisy of everything because we're constantly being told that we need to validate people's pronouns, see people as a certain way. A lot of people are happy to go along with that for the sake of not offending people. And in most cases, I do too. I don't want anyone to be upset. However, not when this takes and disparages away from another community. People are always saying, you don't care about trans rights, you don't care about trans rights, you don't care about human rights. But the issue is that we have one group and another group, and in whatever decision is made, one group's rights are on the line. So it's really not as simple as people think.
Over the years, we have seen different identities arise and be given inclusion in in government laws and institutions for different countries. And other countries, of course, are still saying no to most of these or some of these identities that have risen. We talk of the LGBTQ, including intersex and asex people. Now, it's becoming complex as to define what would mean equality for these different groups, right? What at the end of the day would describe equality across all groups? I'm saying what this health secretary announced here going to be announced also in other countries. Like, they might want to consider the same as to make different words. Now, I'm also seeing a tier, or should I say a pooling in between a certain group. Let's say these same transgender people, as you have seen in this video, because I'm getting that others will still want to remain in the female word so they get to feel, more female as identified by themselves, but others still would want to be grouped as just transgender people, whereby they are, for example, they are biological male, but they identify as women just as a group. So I don't know what you guys think. What are your thoughts about this? Is it good in consideration to biological women or the transgender people that they should provide different words for them? What do you think about all of this from whichever angle, religious angle, sociological angle, economic angle? Otherwise, I do feel it's getting more complex by the day because more identities keep arising and everyone is demanding for what will be for them.